It's time for Positively Kansas. Coming up, we'll discover how a Wichita company helped change the way people across America ate lunch. A visit to this tiny diner in Anthony helps tell the story. Also, no lawnmower, no gasoline. It may be the greenest way to cut your grass. See how this Kansas woman's goat business is the hottest thing going in lawn care. Plus, we'll visit a coffee shop that's a true Wichita destination thanks to its contemporary cosmopolitan vibe and the expert who runs the place. And in our Kansas Wild Edge Report, witness the majestic formations and natural choreography of our feathered friends in flight. It's a natural wonder to behold. I'm Sierra Scott. These stories and more are queued up and ready to roll on this week's edition of Positively Kansas.
Positively Kansas is brought to you in part by Visit Wichita, bringing you Wichita destinations on Positively Kansas. Wichita, the heart of the country.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank Trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
It's a contribution to American life that's largely forgotten. But long before the fast food drive-thru or the pizza delivery guys ever came to be, the tiny hamburger diner was the modern place to have lunch and chew the fat, so to speak. And that restaurant trend can be traced in part to Wichita and some local entrepreneurs who had their fingers on the pulse of mid-20th century life. As Jim Grayway shows us, a few vestiges of their efforts still remain and are now considered historic.
There is something in the air at the Roadrunner Diner in Anthony. There's the smell of hamburgers, onions, and french fries, sure, but this place also conjures an air of nostalgia.
It's pretty awesome that we still have this in Anthony, Kansas.
This and about 3,000 Valentine diners just like it were built in a factory in Wichita.
The Valentine diners have such great history, and what I like about it that I've observed is that it brings people together and they communicate because they're right in a row and it's kind of close proximity.
In the late 1920s, the Obla Hotel Supply Company started assembling these tiny steel buildings, fully equipped, counters, stools, griddle and all, and shipping them out on flatbed trailers to points all across the country.
They were durable, they're portable, they're easily made, they're affordable. It's cheaper to buy a pre-made manufactured building brought out to site than having to pay a contractor, pay a brick mason, pay a carpenter, and assemble that on your own.
The diners were named after Arthur Valentine, who came up with the concept and later owned the company. He was chief salesman when it all began.
And this happens exactly as the Depression hits. And they allow a payment plan. So at a time when people were in desperate straits, they needed to find some way to make a living, they weren't being hired on, maybe they're farmers who aren't making a go of it with crops. This small diner now becomes a way of reaching out to a market. It's a small business, and so they're able to finance that and get themselves started.
You just had to clip this coupon from the Wichita Eagle, fill it out and mail it in, and you were on your way to becoming a restaurateur. The surefire way to identify a Valentine is by the little payment box located just inside the door.
It was kind of like a rent to own, what I understand. You make your payment, you put it in that little mailbox, they come through the night, whatever day they're going to pick it up, they have a key to your door, they get in, they take the payment, they leave.
That way of purchasing diners was long gone by the time Jesus Cantu took over this place in 2010.
I didn't realize how historic it was when I first came in, but as time goes by, you know, I've learned.
This little joint had had several owners and several names since being hauled in here in the late 40s and placed right on Anthony's main drag.
The Valentine Diner is part of a larger trend that really shapes how we eat in the 20th century.
More people were leaving the farm for jobs in town. Meanwhile, travel became easier thanks to automobiles and good highways. Those developments created demand for a quick lunch, and places like this delivered. Valentine and similar type diners ushered in the era of fast food. But as time went on, fast food got even faster with drive-ins and then drive-throughs. And the younger generation came to reject the little roadside diner. Valentine went out of business in 1971. The Anthony Diner had been closed for 27 years when Bob and Carol Hamilton bought it in the early 2000s. They were featured on Hatteberg's People.
For those who remember the original diner, which by the way was called the Green Spot, this is a welcome and tasty piece of history.
The diner changed hands a few more times and struggled. Then, farmer Kyle Carruthers and a partner bought it just because they wanted to save it.
Yeah, it was very intriguing to me to see how it has stood the test of time, and it's always neat to come in here and sit down beside somebody you don't know from anybody and strike up a conversation, and by the time you get done finishing your food, you've got a friend.
A year or so later, they sold it to Cantu, who knew the restaurant business and knew his way around the kitchen.
The most rewarding of all is seeing the customers and just visiting with them while you're cooking. And see, they get to watch you cook their burger or whatever you're cooking. They get to see you do it.
And now the Valentine Diners have a cult following. Jesus says travelers read about this place online and stop just for the nostalgia. But the bread and butter of this business is still the locals who wouldn't keep coming if they didn't love the food.
You can get a burger that's grilled on the on the griddle, and I mean these take you back to how it used to be.
With so much of this place still being original, it's clear to see that these Valentine Diners were built to last. But the truth is now, some 40, 50, 60, 70 years later, very few of these buildings that are still standing are actually functioning as restaurants.
Things that are really, really, really popular often don't get preserved because they're so common. And so for a long time, you saw lots of Valentine diners. And we assumed, well, they're almost disposable. Now we're starting to see smaller and smaller numbers of them.
Wichita's Flow-In Cafe served up burgers and fries for decades near Central and Grove. After it closed in the late 80s, it was moved to a museum in Pennsylvania. As an exhibit, it is helping keep the Valentine story alive. But that story is even more alive at the Roadrunner in Anthony, where things are pretty much as they were 70 years ago. It's where the timeless joys of good food and rubbing shoulders with your neighbor never go out of style. I'm Jim Grayway for Positively Kansas.
You can read more about Valentine Diners and find a list of those still in existence on the Kansas Historical Society website. She's known as the Goat Lady. Mary Powell was a Kansas cowgirl for nearly 3 decades, then switched from herding cattle to grazing goats. Reporter Chris Frank shows us why Powell's herd is in big demand.
Most people probably aren't chomping at the bit to start their workday, but these goats are. They can't wait to go to work. And it's one of the coolest things to see when their boss, Mary Powell, signals the start of their workday.
Come on, girls, it's time to get to work. Okay,
You hear the bells clanging from the locator goats. What you won't hear is any protesting or back talk from these goats. For them, going to work means it's mealtime, and eating is their favorite pastime.
They have a high metabolism, and they're always hungry.
That sounds like me sometimes. Administrative Assistant Penny McLaughlin shoos the goats on. The goats need to move deeper into the brushy areas of this property. This job is near the small town of Elmont, north of Topeka. It's a target-rich area for the goats, with plenty of brush and weeds to munch on.
We got 2 neutered males on the crew, the rest are female.
In case someone wants to know why there aren't any billy goats in this herd, well, the quick and easy answer from Powell is billy goats are disgustingly stinky.
As you can see, they've already disappeared into the brush.
Disappeared, it seems. But Powell says what they do is scout out their surroundings and perimeters, nibbling and sampling the vegetation along the way. Sort of like checking out what's on the menu, the buffet, or dessert table. Then they circle back, eating along the way. They don't have to be micromanaged once they're on the job.
They know what they're doing. They're the professionals. I'm just the taxi driver.
Well, actually, she's really more than that.
I cowboyed for 27 years.
But cowboying, as she put it, can be a tough life. Not that herding goats is without its own challenges. Powell had to give up ranching and herding cattle after a cow trampled her, injuring her back. So a few years back, 2016, she decided goats were more manageable for her. She started her company, Barnyard Weed Warriors, and runs it from Longton in Elk County. Since then, she's been hiring the goats out for grazing properties all over Kansas.
Well, they basically are getting the best nutrition you can get. I mean, most people run their goats and they feed them hay and grain, but goats were designed to be weed eaters. They're browsers. They're like deer. And they go out and they pick the woody plants and the plants that are undesirable.
Those are many of the same plants which can turn an otherwise attractive piece of property into something unsightly when overgrown.
But they prefer the junk. They're the nature's garbage disposal. They were the original weed eater.
And here all this time, I've been using a weed eater with a nylon string attached at the end.
Mary's worked with these goats for so long, she knows each one of them by name, and not only that, she knows them by their voice.
One of the hardest parts of the job for Powell and her helpers is setting up electric fencing to keep the goats enclosed. They have to use a powered weed whacker to clear a path. But if a goat manages to get loose, one of Powell's border collies will round it up.
Fly! Oh. Look at that face. Her exuberance exceeds her intelligence at this age.
Collies help her supervise.
Sometimes border collies are like a child with ADHD that has had a 10-pound bag of M&Ms. They're very hyper. They're workaholics. Down. Fly down. Fly down. All the way down. Come on.
Powell didn't need the dog whisperer to train her dogs. She trained them herself.
I just stay in tune to my dogs, and they tell you how to command them.
Watching over the goats gives Powell time for another passion of hers, writing cowboy poetry and reciting it in competitions like the National Cowboy Poetry Rodeo.
Every rancher has one. That cow who came from hell. She's pure evil and obnoxious. She'll run you down as well. Her eye is always on you. Her calf is never near, but she'll run over you any time of the year.
The inspiration for that poem was the cow that trampled Powell. These goats don't run her over and don't talk back, but they occasionally bellow.
If they start acting up or something, if I get tired of them, I can always sell them, or I could eat them.
But so far, she says it's been a great working relationship. What she says has surprised her the most is the reaction from customers and their neighbors when they know the goats will be coming.
The one thing that I didn't anticipate starting this business was the joy that I bring to people. They get real giddy when they know we're coming.
So perhaps these barnyard weed warriors may be coming to a location near you to eat up some unsightly weeds and brush and bring some joy in the process. From Shawnee County, this is Chris Frank for Positively Kansas.
If you'd like to find out more about Pal and her weed-eating goats, go to barnyardwheatwarriors.com. There are a lot of places to get a cup of coffee, but not all those places are true Wichita destinations. This week, Brian Ramsdale takes us to a local coffee shop run by a Wichitan who has trained some of the best baristas in the world.
The perfect cup of coffee. That's what Leslie Coffee Co. in Wichita strives for each and every time.
But I think if it tastes good and it has a good story, then it's like a bonus.
Sarah Leslie just opened her coffee shop in the historic Delano Shopping and Entertainment District a few months ago and already is a success. Happy customers fill the tables and the coffee.
So that's our vanilla latte.
Trained by some of the best coffee makers in the nation, Sarah quickly became a rising star in New York City's coffee scene.
My job before I moved back was running a campus where we would offer the barista level 1 and level 2 curriculum to baristas who would come from all over the world just to take those classes.
Sarah would train aspiring baristas, and now she's bringing her skills home to Wichita.
Sarah's someone that I learn from all the time, for sure. My workflow has definitely improved so much.
Emily Hankins has been a barista for about 2 years.
If you can brew it correctly, it'll be good every time.
So the opportunity to work with Sarah and her unique way of making coffee has been nothing less than inspirational.
People are surprised by the way that we do things, especially regarding our no-tip policy.
Believe it or not, making a drink like this from scratch can take less than a couple of minutes.
I'm gonna make a vanilla latte for the cameras, okay?
The favorite at Leslie Coffee Co. is the vanilla latte. There's grinding and measuring.
Today we want to use 20 grams.
The machine might help brew the drink, but crafting it to look like a masterpiece is a different story. So what's happening here?
Okay, so now I'm gonna try and pour a pretty design. Latte art is kind of like, you know, you eat with your eyes first, so you can have a delicious drink that doesn't have latte art, but it's kind of like the icing on the cake, and it's a sign that your barista knows what they're doing.
This is a coffee shop that takes you to a different place. Large windows, almost a New York City vibe, yet it's uniquely Wichita, even down to the wallpaper.
And the Wichita flag and Kansas.
Leslie Coffee Co., found only in Wichita, the heart of the country.
Next week, we'll take you to a Wichita destination that has become the city's signature landmark. Learn its remarkable history and see why so many visitors find it awe-inspiring. Now to the wild side of Kansas life, where flying ducks are poetry in motion. In this week's Kansas Wild Edge report, Mike Blair shows us their mastery of the air and why their fast maneuvers always make filming them a real challenge.
My favorite photo subject has always been ducks. Late winter finds the birds dressed in best breeding colors, and courtship flights show off their best aerial moves. Flying ducks define poetry in motion, a combination of power and acrobatic skill. All bird flight is wondrous to watch, but I'm spellbound at the choreography of duck squadrons when they come and go. The dabblers, boisterous and brightly colored, are more common and easiest to watch. But the divers bring breathtaking displays with their greater speed and daring approaches. They carve the wind to defy G-forces, leaning into blistering turns that end in sudden splashdowns. And they drag their paddles as well as wings to burn the air and slow for landing. It's a race car scene where tight packs hold their breaths as drivers twist and turn in close quarters. And you can sense a joy in the speed as flyers play the wind in their descents. The thrill extends to all who watch. Yes, I'm there in spring migration for another fix of this special beauty. It's as close as I can come to the buzz of rushing air. I'm Mike Blair for Positively Kansas.
Just as the behavior of wildlife changes with the seasons, so does the behavior of humans. There's nothing like fall in the sunflower state. Cooler temperatures and vibrant colors are just a few of the things to celebrate. Anthony Powell visited two towns that have long traditions of celebrating the season, Valley Center and Douglas. We begin in Valley Center.
There's nothing like small-town traditions, and no town does it better than Valley Center. Since 1961, VC has held its Fall Festival, a jam-packed parade kicking things off.
Being in the parade is especially one of my favorite honors to do.
This is the time of year many people here look forward to most, a time to celebrate community.
It is a great community feeling. We feel safe here. We can come out, we can walk the streets and meet family and friends that we haven't seen for a while.
There's something for everybody. Games, great food, and of course, the rides.
Yeah, I love actually riding with my friends.
Yes, this event has been a place for family and friends to gather for more than half a century. The Historical Museum has pictures of festivals representing numerous decades.
This is Valley Center's signature event. We look forward to it all year, and we have people who have been coming to this event their entire lives who are now back bringing their children.
Fun, nostalgic, uplifting, entertaining. As you can see, just a few of the words you could use to describe the Fall Festival. But there's another side to this story as well, and that's the positive economic impact it has on local businesses. One of Valley Center's most successful businesses is Big Larry's Burgers. They double staffing for Fall Festival.
It's usually pretty busy from the time the parade gets over until about 9 p.m. It's one of our busiest days of the year.
Hall says the event has helped attract and maintain customers from all over South Central Kansas.
We hope that people bring their families in and try it out today, and then hopefully come back and we'll have a lifelong customer.
From bringing folks from and outside Valley Center together to helping local businesses, Fall Festival is a big win for this small town, and one that has helped shape its history. Meanwhile, several miles to the southeast, the small town of Douglas celebrated 150 years of existence with its annual Frontier Days, named for Douglas being part of the new frontier as America expanded west. Lots of great food and activities are a big part of this day. However, what's celebrated most during the Douglas Frontier Days is the town's history. It's one of the oldest places in all of Kansas, founded in 1869.
Douglas was founded by some veterans of the Civil War
There was land grants being offered, and so most of the people that came out here at that time were receiving their 160 acres of land grants. Several of the people took the train to Newton, walked from Newton to here, and called it home.
One reason folks are so proud to call Douglas home today is the large and newly renovated historical museum, where you'll find artifacts from Douglas's beginning and older.
One treasure we did find in a broken down piece of furniture was a 1774 almanac. I thought it must be a reproduction. I got a hold of an online authenticator, and he said, no, they printed lots of them.
Blair says the museum draws people from all over Kansas, especially on Frontier Days, because there are so many items that appeal to any history buff. But as much as Frontier Days is about Douglas's history, it's also about looking forward.
I felt like Douglas had a lot more potential.
That's why Jaden Coots ran for mayor in 2017. He wanted to show outsiders what a great place Douglas is to live. Coots says Frontier Days is a great showcase for that.
It's a good way to people that grew up here, get them back and check out the museum. Museum's looking great now. Kathy Blair, she just fixed that up, and meet with people that they haven't seen in a long time, stop by the cafe and have a cup of coffee.
Coots says one of his main priorities to try and increase the population is creating more affordable housing. One thing he doesn't have to promote is the tremendous sense of community and belonging.
There's nobody getting cut from sports. You go out for sports, you're going to be on the team.
And of course, there's the pride Douglas residents feel living in one of the state's oldest towns, going strong now for 150 years. In Douglas and Valley Center, I'm Anthony Powell for Positively Kansas.
Leaders in both towns say they're happy so many young people participate in the fall events, assuring that these important traditions will carry on for years to come. Well, that's all for this week, but jot down our email address, positivelykansas@kpts.org. If you have any story ideas, please share them with us. I'm Sierra Scott. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you next time.
Program support provided by the F. Price Kosman Memorial Trust, Entrust Bank trustee, bringing you the Kansas Wild Edge segments on Positively Kansas.
Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas serves more than 930,000 Kansans in various programs. Independent, member-owned. Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas, an independent licensee of Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association, supports KPTS.
Before investing your hard-earned money, make sure your financial advisor understands your objectives. Mark Douglas, CFP, serving our community for over 20 years, providing customized financial solutions that focus on the individual.
Visit Wichita, bringing you Wichita destinations on Positively Kansas. Wichita, the heart of the country.